One of the biggest myths about the Dakota apartment building is how it got its name. Its owner, Edward C. Clark, was a brilliant businessman. He was originally the lawyer for Isaac Merritt Singer. Now, contrary to popular belief, Mr. Singer did not invent the sewing machine, but he did make vast improvements upon it, and he was an important manufacturer of sewing machines. To do so, he needed to incorporate a lot of other inventors' patents, and that necessitated a lot of legal maneuvering to do so. As a result, his legal fees were through the roof, and so it was actually less expensive to invite Mr. Clark, his lawyer, to be his business partner. And so Mr. Clark agreed, and together they built the first multinational corporation. Many years later, when Mr. Singer had passed away and Mr. Clark was rolling in dough, he retired from the company and he began to travel around Europe. And then he began to invest in real estate in Manhattan. Among his first endeavors was a building in Midtown Manhattan that he called the Wyoming. Let me say that again. He owned a building called the Wyoming in Midtown Manhattan. Why did he name it the Wyoming? Because he liked the name. You see, Mr. Clark was a visionary, and he had high hopes for developing the Upper West Side of Manhattan. And so he and his favorite architect, Henry Janeway Hardenberg, decided to design and build the Dakota. And he named the Dakota because, you ready for this? He liked the name. That's it. He liked the name. He wanted the streets on the Upper West Side of Manhattan to be named after territories in the American West. But they didn't. And so he named the Dakota the Dakota. The idea that anyone insulted Edward C. Clark or belittled him and called the Dakota Clark's Folly, or said that the Dakota was so far north that it may as well be in the Dakota territories, is ridiculous. That never happened. That never happened. He just liked the name. Nobody made fun of him. Nobody was insulting him. Nobody was saying that the building was so far away, it may as well be in the Dakota. Where that came from was in the early 1930s, there was an article written, and the journalist asked a gentleman who used to work at the Dakota how he thinks it got the name. And the guy said, I don't know, probably because it was so far away, it may as well be in the Dakota territories. That was said in the 30s. The Dakota was built between 1880 and 1884. That guy probably wasn't even alive. That guy just made an off-the-cuff remark. That's it. But it's not real. And so if you ever hear anybody say that that's how the Dakota got its name, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. In fact, here's a quote from Edward Clark in 1880. You ready? Quote, "The names of the newest states and territories have been chosen with excellent taste." End quote. Here's an excerpt from my book, The Dakota Scrapbook, that was published in 2014. Edward Clark was fond of the names of America's Western territories and was interested in using distinctly American names for the streets and avenues that referenced the newly developing American West. In February 1880, Edward Clark suggested that the streets on the Upper West Side should be named as follows. 8th Avenue, he wanted to call it Montana Place. It's now Central Park West. 9th Avenue, he wanted to call it Wyoming Place, now called Columbus Avenue. 10th Avenue, Edward C. Clark wanted to call it Arizona Place. It wasn't. It's called Amsterdam Avenue. And 11th Avenue, he wanted to call Idaho Place. And it wasn't. It was called West End Avenue. During pre-construction, construction, and sometimes after construction, the Dakota was alternatively referred to as the Dakota Flats, the Dakota Hotel, the Dakota Apartments, and simply as the Dakota. The Dakota takes its name from the Dakota territories, but not in the way that many have heard. It's a popular but incorrect story that goes that the building was ridiculed because of its distance from the central part of Manhattan at the time, and the urban legend has that the name came from that. However, the truth is that Edward Clark endeavored to associate the Upper West Side of Manhattan with America's West, which was considered to be uniquely beautiful and, for many, economically successful. Edward Clark also envisioned a time in line with the developers of Central Park that the day would come when the city of Manhattan would grow northward. At that time, the Dakota, like Central Park, would be the location of a healthier environment, a great deal of social activity, and would eventually be in the center of the city, not far from it. But most of all, he just liked the name Dakota. In fact, to symbolize the name of the Dakota, Edward Clark instructed Hardenberg to add Wild West details on the facades, including arrowheads, ears of corn, sheaves of wheat, and an image of a Native American carved on its southern facade above the 72nd Street entry. And so think about this. If people were supposedly making fun of the Dakota and its location, and that is when and how it got its name, then how come, during the design stage, before it was even constructed, Edward C. Clark and Henry Janeway Hardenberg planned for the building to incorporate Wild West designs? I'll tell you why. It's because Edward C. Clark already chose the name long before anyone ever saw the building. And now, my fellow time travelers and strange historians, you know the true story of how the Dakota got its name. So spread the word. Kindly like and share the show and subscribe to my channel. And please become a member and join us over on Patreon for exclusive content. Until next time, I wish you safe travels on all your journeys.